Embark on a solitary journey into the wilderness as we follow a skilled craftsman building his dream cabin from scratch. Watch as he overcomes challenges, harnesses nature's resources, and creates a cozy haven amidst the wild. From laying the foundation to crafting intricate details, this video captures the essence of self-reliance and the beauty of living off the grid. To carry out his plan, he put on his prepared backpack and went into the wild forest to find the best spot to build a house. After some time searching, he identified a suitable area to prepare for building the house. He put down his backpack and began the journey of building his house. The place is full of fallen trees, which he can put to good use. He doesn't need to spend extra time gathering them. He can make good use of them. He doesn't need to spend extra time collecting. Before officially starting to build the shelter, he plans to build a resting area for himself. He takes his tools and digs 2 holes in the ground. Then he buries to thick wooden posts and backfills with soil and rice husks, making the posts secure. Then he splits the logs and processes them into planks for the tabletop. With the help of a chainsaw, flat wooden planks are produced one after another. Then he nails them together to form a tabletop. In order to have a place to sit and rest later, he thoughtfully makes a stool. Finally, he sets up a waterproof cover and completes this simple camp. This simple camp allows him to work without any worries. Considering the cold winters here, he chooses the traditional building method of building his shelter underground. He finds a spacious open area and marks the location of the shelter with construction lines. The location of the shelter. Then he picks up a shovel and starts digging. Fortunately, the soil in this area is quite loose, making digging effortless. Soon, he digs a pit half his height. After 2 hours of hard work, he decides to take a break. He says it's a break, but it's not really. He's actually collecting moss nearby. He easily fills 2 sacks and brings them back to camp for later use. He was in the grass for a while just now, and there are too many mosquitoes in the woods. To protect his delicate face from harm, he has to wear a mosquito net. Then he continues processing materials with peace of mind. According to the length and width of the pit, he processes the fallen trees into logs of the correct length. The dense trees on the ground have all fallen naturally. He has no qualms about collecting them. No one wants them anyway. They'll rot eventually. Collecting them is putting them to good use. When he has enough logs for the time being, he plans to pre-assemble the walls above ground. Pre-assemble the walls above ground. If he builds directly in the pit, he might not have enough space. He might be restricted by the space. By processing each log in advance, the assembly later will be twice as efficient. He marks both ends of the logs and then carves out curved grooves. He uses a mortise and tenon structure for joining, even if the logs are not perfectly smooth. This ensures a tight fit at the joints. Next, he processes the logs in batches and slowly builds up the wooden wall. It's noon now. Work is work, but he still needs to eat. As the saying goes, food is iron, rice is steel. You'll get hungry if you skip a meal. A simple meal. Canned food with cucumber, A combination of meat and vegetables is the perfect match. After eating and drinking his fill, he starts charring the logs to use for the foundation. Only charring can make the wood more durable, since he's using a lot of logs to build the walls. To avoid confusion during assembly, each place log needs to be marked with a pen. After all the materials are ready, he enters the pit again and clears out the remaining soil. Then he brings over the charred logs and arranges them evenly on the ground as the foundation of his new home. Then he disassembles the previously assembled walls and stacks them according to their numbers. Now he can start building the walls with peace of mind, thanks to the careful preparation beforehand. Stacking the wooden walls is very easy. He just needs to strictly follow the numbered order and place the logs in their corresponding positions, and they can be easily stacked up to prevent the surrounding soil from collapsing and to insulate against moisture in the soil. He needs to use this waterproof cloth as a barrier, considering the many gaps between the logs. If left untreated, the insulation of the shelter will be greatly reduced. Speaking of which, his foresight is admirable. He prepared some moss early on. With each layer of logs added, he adds a layer of moss to fill the gaps. This easily solves the problem. When the wooden wall is level with the ground, the gap between the wooden wall and the earth wall can be backfilled with soil. The below-ground walls are now complete. But there's still no entrance. He can't crawl in and out every time. He uses wooden planks to nail a rough door frame onto the wall. Then he saws off the excess wood to create the doorway. To move into his new home sooner, he calls his helper friend to assist. After all, many hands make light work. With one more person working, the project progresses much faster. After their careful work, a neat doorway and a beautiful staircase are built. Then, with the help of his friend, he quickly gathers another large batch of logs. The original wooden wall isn't even as tall as a person. To live comfortably, he needs to continue building the walls higher. Having finished building the wooden walls, the shelter is about to be capped. He first selects a thick log and places it in the middle as a support beam for the roof. Then he cuts bevels on the front and back walls and starts laying wooden planks for the roof. Each plank must be tightly connected, leaving no gaps. This traditional roof structure not only facilitates drainage, but also makes it easy to clear snow in winter. After trimming the edges and corners of the roof, he is very satisfied with the result. He immediately covers the roof with waterproof cloth. At this point, the shelter has the basic function of sheltering from wind and rain. Many days later, he is seen again. He promises his wife that he won't rest his left foot on his right foot anymore while watching videos before bed, and finally earns his wife's forgiveness. After staying home for a few days, he still misses his shelter. He returns to the wilderness, considering that winter is coming soon. Heating the cabin is the top priority. He brought the stove with him. He places the stove in the corner by the door, carefully measures, and determines the location of the smoke outlet. Then he uses a saw to cut a hole in the wall. For safety reasons, the area around the smoke outlet needs to be lined with red bricks. This insulates the high temperature of the chimney and protects the wooden wall from the heat. After finishing this, he can install the chimney. Any remaining gaps are filled with cement inside and out, leaving no chance for the cold wind outside to enter. After the stove is installed, he can't wait to light a fire to test the stove's reliability. As smoke rises from the chimney, it signifies the successful installation of the stove. With the stove providing warmth to his new home, he continues to process wooden planks with peace of mind. With the saw cutting quickly, he turns the logs into smooth planks. After preparing the materials, he carries them inside to continue laying the floor. Halfway through installing the floor, he suddenly remembers something. He forgot to install a part on the chimney. So he has to disassemble the chimney first. He installs the missing part. Like this, he covers the chimney with a layer of sheet metal. This not only improves the safety of the stove, but also makes it look better. He then continues installing the unfinished floor. Don't let his burly appearance fool you. He's very meticulous in his work. Each plank he lays fits perfectly. He leaves a small area for later. He plans to build it when he comes back tomorrow. When he wakes up, the entire forest is covered in a thick layer of snow. Returning to the shelter, the first thing he does is light the stove to warm up the inside. Then he starts clearing the snow from the doorway. He didn't expect so much snow to accumulate overnight. It's hard to imagine how heavily it snowed last night. Although the stove is heating the shelter, the cold air from outside can still easily get in. To make his stay more comfortable, he decides to build a proper door. So he starts working on the doorway. Considering his tall and burly physique, he needs to widen the doorway. After all, having to stoop every time he enters and exits is quite a challenge for his old, strained back. Then he carves grooves on both sides of the doorway and installs wooden strips. This ensures that the walls won't shift or loosen. To make the doorway look better, he specifically crafts a door frame. He uses insulation material for the edging. Then he inserts the door frame into the doorway. It fits perfectly. He just needs to secure it with 18-centimeter nails, and it's as sturdy as a rock. Next, he starts making the door. He aligns and joins the planks and secures them with screws. Then he installs hinges. Having the door open inwards prevents snow from blocking it. A very wise choice. Night falls quickly in winter. He, who usually dislikes working overtime, works late into the night to finish his new home sooner. It's completely dark. By the time he finally finished installing the door, although it's very late, he still wants to lay the rest of the flooring. It snowed all night again. The next day, the snow is knee-deep. It's like a fairy tale snowscape. He can't help but stop and admire it. It snowed so much last night that the door is frozen shut. The walls inside are glistening, covered in a thin layer of ice crystals. Without further ado, he immediately starts clearing the snow from the doorway. After clearing the doorway, he chops the dried logs into firewood. As usual, he starts a fire first. Everything goes smoothly. Usually, there are no surprises, but then a surprise comes along. Because of the heavy snow last night, the chimney is blocked. The smoke can't escape, and the fire won't light. He has to go outside again to clear more snow. Then he removes the chimney to clean it. He works for a while before finally fixing the problem. To brighten up the interior, he cuts window openings in the front and back walls of the shelter and prepares to install windows. Considering the insulation, he doesn't dare make the windows too big. Small windows like these are enough. They'll provide some natural light for the shelter. After finishing the windows, so he doesn't have to sleep on the floor, he brings in another pile of processed planks and builds a wooden bed inside. Thanks to his previous experience building the cabin, he's building a small bed is a piece of cake for him. For future convenience, he needs to add some furniture to his new home. He uses the leftover materials from the bed to build a table. He quickly finishes making a smooth tabletop. Then he installs it near the bed. This maximizes the use of the bed. He doesn't need separate chairs. The bed can also be used as a stool. The table is designed to be foldable. This saves a lot of space. It's killing two birds with one stone. To make it smooth, he carefully sands the tabletop. After finishing these details, he starts cleaning the shelter. His new home is officially complete. After months of hard work, he finally has a home in the wilderness. With the cabin to shelter him from wind and snow, and plenty of firewood to get through the winter, he decides to make a delicious meal. To reward himself for his hard work, he takes out his prized pork chops, seasons them, and fries them in a pan. The sizzling sound of the hot oil adds a touch of warmth to the wilderness cabin, adds a touch of life to the wilderness cabin. It's like a housewarming celebration for he. Compared to the hustle and bustle of the city, he prefers the peaceful wilderness life. Although it seems a bit lonely, he has the picturesque nature to accompany him. He can live a very comfortable life. He spends a comfortable night in his new home. Next, he plans to improve the shelter. Because winter came too quickly, the previous construction was a bit rushed. Many details haven't been perfected yet. After a simple breakfast, he starts his work for the day. He begins by cleaning the walls. He scrapes off the excess moss from the walls, otherwise it would constantly shed debris, and cleaning would be troublesome. After some careful work, the walls look much better. Considering that the dining table will come into contact with water during use, he chars the surface like this. This not only brings out the unique grain of the wood, but also makes it more durable. After finishing this work, he plans to expand the bed area. Because he has run out of planks, he goes outside to process more. With the help of the chainsaw, he turns the logs into usable planks. With enough materials, he can start building with confidence. It must be said that after all this time working in the wilderness, his carpentry skills have really improved. He quickly finishes the frame. Then he installs hinges. He uses the same installation method as the dining table. This is also to save space. After all, indoor space is limited. It can be folded up when not in use. When folded down, it becomes one with the bed frame, instantly transforming into a luxurious lounge area. For his creativity alone, I give him 99 points. For safety reasons, fire prevention is especially important in a wooden cabin. The meticulous he covers the floor area around the stove with sheet metal. This prevents any stray embers from causing a fire. To make life more convenient, he plans to add some shelves to store his belongings, making it easier to store household items. After securing the shelves, he puts his commonly used items on them. The cabin becomes tidy and organized. Don't let his burly appearance fool you. He is quite skilled at woodworking. He turns ordinary wood scraps into treasures. The cutting board and spatula are all handmade. He also thoughtfully adds a solid wood handle to the door. Opening and closing the door will be much easier now, with his continuous improvements. The cabin becomes increasingly well-equipped. Anything he needs and can think of, he creates with his own hands. Feeling more and more hopeful about life, after a long day of work, he decides to make himself some soup to celebrate. He chops the ingredients and puts them in a clay pot. Then he wraps it in aluminum foil and puts it in the stove to bake. He just needs to wait for 49 minutes. And the delicious soup will be ready. It's hard to imagine enjoying delicious hot soup in the cold winter in the wilderness forest. What a treat! After his meal, he has a new idea. He plans to add a movable wooden stool. Although the bed can be used as a stool, it's not movable. It's not very convenient. He hollows out a log. Then he drills many holes in it. Then he weaves rope through the holes. A comfortable and breathable stool is complete. With this, the interior decoration of the shelter is finished. His wilderness life will surely become more and more comfortable. In the blink of an eye, it's already May, but in cold Siberia, the weather is still very cold. The thick snow hasn't completely melted yet. Today, he returns from a supply run. Upon returning to the shelter, he sees a fallen tree. It's lying right on the roof. Fortunately, the roof is sturdy. There's no major damage. Outside, everything is coming back to life, but the temperature is still below zero. As usual, he needs to light the stove first when he returns to warm up the inside. Then he prepares to dig a cellar inside for storing food. This way, he can store more supplies. He can store more because earlier, he already cut a hole in the floor. Now he just needs to dig down to create the storage room. The soil is still as loose as before. He quickly digs a pit almost a meter deep. Then he places the prepared wooden frame inside. He covers it with wooden planks, creating a food cellar. After finishing the cellar, he starts working on the roof, reinforcing it. He removes the wooden strips holding the waterproof cloth on the roof. After carefully cleaning them, he adds another layer of waterproof cloth. This ensures that the upcoming rainy season won't cause any leaks. Then he processes more wooden planks to reinforce the roof. This time, he uses more closely spaced wooden strips, creating a wooden frame to frame the entire roof. After reinforcing the roof, he has a sudden idea. He adds a layer of soil on top of the roof. He wants to use this method to provide basic protection for the waterproofing, so it won't be easily damaged by the sun and rain. It also provides insulation in preparation for the upcoming summer. To prevent soil erosion on the roof, he has already prepared a solution. He just needs to sprinkle grass seeds on the roof. After a while, the roof will be covered in lush green grass. Having taken care of these details, he continues to live peacefully in his shelter. In his free time, his greatest joy is checking if the grass on the roof has grown. He checks it almost 3 times a day. After another half a month, the grass on the roof finally starts to grow. As the saying goes, to live a good life, you have to wear a little green on your head.